that Hollywood, California ended up being the home of motion pictures in the 20th century was never a given. In fact, the motion picture industry in the United States came very close to not being possible at all in the early 1900s. So how did movies come to Hollywood? And what were the circumstances that allowed American films to dominate cinema as an art form? Today on Haunted Hollywood Hour, we're sharing a twisty, surprising tale about an eccentric man who has been forgotten by history, but who, one historian argues, was responsible for the American film industry we know today. And joining me to talk about Colonel William Selig is Ringa-san from Pittsburgh, which many folks don't know this. Pittsburgh, Ringa, is the birthplace of Warner Brothers Studios.
I did not know that, actually.
If you look up Warner Brothers Studios on Wikipedia, it will not say that. But the Warner Brothers, whose names were Polish and confusing, but started with a W, they got their little start doing their little Nickelodeons in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the Nickelodeons had a start in Pittsburgh, yeah. But I didn't know the Warner Brothers specifically.
And the name of this little studio, the little Nickelodeons, is the name that starts with a D that you're really good at pronouncing.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Oh. I'm like, what? There's a whole...
I look at that name and I'm like, there is a lot of letters in there that I know many of them are not pronounced.
Yeah, the French like to put letters in for just decoration. The Duquesne, if you're not familiar, has an S and a Q and a U and another S that are not pronounced at all.
So, Ringa, before we get into our wild, twisty story that I think is going to blow people's minds, anything spooky happened to you recently?
Not necessarily spooky, but since you're bringing up film in Pittsburgh, I was just working on a movie recently here, and it's called How to Rob a Bank, and it probably won't be out in theaters until September next year, probably a year from now. You know how it is.
Yeah.
But in this movie, Nicholas Hoult is the main star, and he plays a character who's kind of anti-big banks and anti-fascism and stuff like that. And he calls himself the Wolf, and he live streams similar to Anonymous with a wolf mask and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so he's got all these followers, and everybody wears wolf masks and has all these wolf things, and there's wolf everything. So I got to be a scary wolf who's riding in the streets and screaming at banks and stuff in a movie. And it was actually really cool because I've been an extra in lots of movies and TV shows and stuff because a lot of stuff films here, but I've never gotten to film the last day. So I was in the very last scene of this movie that was filmed and got to be there when Nicholas rapped and got to be there when they wrapped the whole movie. So that was super cool. And it wasn't...
Did you steal anything from set?
I stole one of the fake movie dollars because there's a scene where they steal a ATM, and as they're dragging it away, it explodes money everywhere. So I stole one of the fake, dollars that looks very, very real.
I was an extra in The Princess Diaries with Anne Hathaway. We got to wear the school uniforms and everything. But what I stole was a notebook that had the logo of her school on it.
Yeah. Shoots that I was involved in were all overnight shoots. So it was outside in the dark and lots of smoke, and there was fire and Molotov cocktails and fireworks and lots of really cool, and it was all practical effects. So it's going to look really neat.
Let's get into this story. So we're talking about the origins of Hollywood, with which Ringa is intrinsically a part of as a background actor.
I am. I'm the heart and soul of the movie industry.
Background actors are the heart and soul of the movie industry. We got to do whatever we can to make sure that background actors are real human beings and
Absolutely.
not AI
Absolutely.
Garbage.
And it's funny because in this movie, I am right in front of the camera a lot, but I'm in a wolf mask. So it's the closest I've ever been to constantly near the camera, but you won't know it's me.
Amazing. So at the 1948 Academy Awards, a ceremony that was enjoyed by a global audience because of radio, folks were tuning in and listening to Academy Awards on their little radio, not yet televised. a 84-year-old man receives an honorary Oscar. This man is described as squat with wire-rimmed glasses, a bushy white mustache, and he speaks with a tremulous voice. 4 months later, he would be dead, and his obituary would laud him as an industry pioneer and responsible for the first great California-made feature film, The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh,
right. Back in those days, a full-length feature film was like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So
you've come a long way.
It was silent, so gives you an idea of what was going on. Filmed in 1908, this was the first motion picture to be made in Southern California, but Colonel William N. Selig's wildlife brought him through a wide variety of different careers. He was a magician's apprentice, a vaudeville performer, and an animal trainer. He built a zoo, the largest zoo of its kind in East Los Angeles. It had a collection of more than 700 animals. In his life, he concocted a fraudulent lawsuit as a publicity stunt, which is so Hollywood. Yeah. Right? He was almost murdered. And yes, he's the first film producer to begin producing films in California. And he built the first ever movie studio / tourist attraction in Los Angeles.
That's fancy. That's like the beginning of it all.
He was the guy. He's like, here's my movie studio. Also come here, tour it. Here's zoos. Here's all these things that you can enjoy and do. And no one remembers him. And we'll get to the reason why he's largely been forgotten. It's intentional. So who is William N. Selig? We're going to explore his colorful life story. And it all starts March 14th, 1864 in Chicago, Illinois. So he's a Pisces. Willie is the fifth of 8 children born to strict Roman Catholic, German-speaking immigrants from Eastern Europe. Willie attends public school until the age of 13 when he starts apprenticing to an upholsterer. And still in his teens, Willie creates his own magic act. So he's working in furniture. He develops his own magic act. This, if you've listened to our Harry Blackstone episode, Harry Blackstone the great magician, had a similar trajectory, making furniture, becoming a magician. And Willie is actually good enough as an entertainer to quit upholstery and perform magic in dime museums and variety theaters. Eventually, he starts touring throughout the Midwest, but he has some vaguely defined health problem. What a lot of people were doing in the 1880s was taking their health problems to California, where the air is cleaner, the weather is warmer, and Willie manages a fruit and health ranch in Northern California. This town is called Chicago Park.
Okay.
I'm from Northern California and I've never heard of Chicago Park, but it's still there and has a population of 12,000 people. It's 25 miles north of Auburn, between Grass Valley and Auburn, and it's literally in the middle of freaking nowhere. And the name Chicago Park comes from its founding residents who came from Chicago, like our friend Willie. They came to grow fruit, and that fruit was shipped back to Illinois. So I don't know, but I have a feeling Willie might have been one of these founders since he came out in 1880s. He's from Chicago, and the whole health issue that he then gets cured of. I kind of wonder if it was all part of a money-making deal from the beginning.
He sounds like he was a hustler, so that would totally make sense to me.
This guy is definitely a hustler. And here's the other thing. That part of Northern California is not the sunny California that you think of when you think of like Los Angeles or Santa Barbara or San Diego. It's cold.
Yeah, so that's like snow and woods and shit.
That's where the Donner Party died in 1847 and had to eat each other. So the original founders do end up leaving. So if our friend Willie did have health problems, I don't think they were probably cured by going to Chicago Park. But while he's still there in Chicago Park, Willie is still performing magic for the local mining and farming communities. At some point, he's like fuck this. And he heads to San Francisco, still not yet sunny California. San Francisco is known for being foggy and kind of bleak. But in San Francisco, he's performing in theaters up and down the California coast. In the 1890s, Willie partners with an African-American barber from San Francisco named Lou Johnson. And Lou has 30 years of experience operating all Black minstrel troupes throughout the West and Midwest. And together, Willie and Lou organize a troupe known as, by the way, I'm going to do a major trigger warning for offensive 19th century terminology. Get ready. It's called Selig and Johnson's Colored Minstrels.
Okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I know. Yeah, it could have
But it's still bad, but
Yeah, it's kind of like grandma, like your grandma says those sorts of words and you're like, grandma, no. They have a wagon pulled by 4 horses and a large performance stage that the horses pull around, and they take it from town to town. They're actually one of the few documented mixed race minstrel troupes at this time. And they have 2 white guys. One of them has a bunch of trained dogs. They have a Mexican driver who plays a trombone, and they have 10 Black performers. Around this time, Willie starts using the title Colonel because it adds an air of respectability. And you could just do that back then. Ringo, what would you call yourself?
Something like maestro.
So you could just do that, and you should, I think.
Yeah.
But life on the road is super grueling. At one point, they get stuck in Bakersfield. No one wants to get stuck in Bakersfield.
It's like a desert, isn't it?
It's like flat. It's farm country. Eventually, the band breaks up. Getting stuck in Bakersfield would do that to you, though. But 2 of the performers Willie brings together, George Walker and Burt Williams, become the most renowned figures of the minstrel era. Together, they would set up an agency, the Williams and Walker Company, to support African-American actors and other performers. They create networking opportunities. They produce new works. They also set up a union for Black performers called the Negroes Society. They appear on Broadway. They do a show at the Metropolitan Opera House. A huge part of their success is playing against type. Shows at the time, these minstrel shows. By the way, do you have any familiarity with like the minstrel show theater genre?
I do.
It's basically this genre of theater that started in the 1830s, which was extremely racist, and it would usually be white people in blackface. It would usually involve white people speaking with terrible accents. People would laugh at them. But then, Black actors like Walker and Williams start doing their own minstrel shows. White audiences are coming to their shows, and also Black audiences are coming to their shows. But the thing is, Black audiences are laughing at jokes that are going over the heads of the white audiences. The Black performers are playing against type. So where there would usually be like a lighter skinned, straight man type person, and then like a bumbling, comical, darker skinned character.
Yeah.
Williams and Walker reverse that, and they have the lighter skinned character being the bumbling one, and then the darker skinned character being the dapper, sophisticated one.
I love that.
Some say that Bing Crosby and Bob Hope's comedy films are heavily inspired by Walker and Williams shows. And they did so much more than I could ever cover. So if I ever do a New York entertainment and history podcast, I will do a whole episode on them. But we have Colonel Willie to credit with bringing those performers together and allowing them to create all the success, not only for themselves, but for a bunch of Black performers of the time who could kind of copy their footsteps and do similar things. And also with the agencies that they started that empowered Black performers, it was all really great. So if you are thinking, hey, Colonel Willie might be a good guy, hold that thought.
it's a good thing, but also it's the whole white savior thing.
It's also white people gonna white people. They're only gonna do things that serve themselves and making their own profits. So if being not racist is profitable, they will do that.
Until it stops being profitable.
Which we have been seeing like in 2020. Oh, wow. Being not racist was good for companies for a very, very short time. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, never mind.
Yep. Same thing with Pride stuff. And how this past year we didn't get Pride stuff from corporations. You know, it's funny how that works.
So Colonel Willie, he is carrying on, struggling on. The performers in his band that broke up are doing great. He is trying to figure out what he's going to do to make things work. And in 1895, he tries to connect with a wild animal show called Boone's Arena in the hope that he can work for that show while they crisscross America. And so he can use that as like a way to get back to Chicago. But in Dallas, they get 2 weeks of rain. Willie is bummed out. There's nothing to do. He's stuck in Dallas, Texas, in the 1890s, and Willie encounters a kinetoscope for the first time. Do you know what a kinetoscope is?
I have no idea.
I will describe it for you.
Okay.
So this is a coin-operated machine. It's like a box, and you put your face into it. It allows you to view motion pictures, like one person at a time can view 20 to 60 seconds. So it's like TikTok, but silent. You have to look inside a box and you have to pay money each time you watch a TikTok.
Yes. Okay. I have seen these on Mr. Rogers, but I didn't know that it was called that.
Many of these clips are from vaudeville, Wild West shows, dances, sports, all of them filmed around Thomas Edison's Black Maria studio in West Orange, New Jersey. Thomas Edison will be a major player in this.
Of course, because, you know, he was such a great dude.
So Willie is blown away by old-timey TikTok. It's the 90s. He's like, wow, pictures move. This is amazing technology. But other people in America are like, this is old news. You've been out in California where there's no TikTok. Yeah. Guess what? We've been doing TikTok since Tumblr era. But basically, he's enraptured. He's like, what if we take these single person TikToks and project them so people in an entire theater can see them. And that way, me with my little theater background, I will charge tickets so people can see moving images in a group of other people.
It's not to like advance the art. It's not to, you know, make it more accessible. It's to make money.
Yeah, exactly. And to raise money for this idea, he starts doing this phony spiritualist act. So he basically becomes a fake YouTube psychic, which again, his decision to, okay, I got to make money real quick. I'm going to be a fake psychic makes me think his fruit and health farm in Northern California probably wasn't all on the up and up. Around 1896, while Edison is marketing his own movie projector, Willie attempts to build his own. There was a lot in this book, and I skimmed it, but I get the feeling that stealing blueprints was a thing that happened. And
well, it's something that Edison definitely did.
Yeah. Willie is eventually able to get his own Selig standard camera and Selig polyscope projector made with his fake YouTube psychic money. This accommodates the Edison sprocketed film. At the time, Eastman Kodak is the only maker of motion picture film. They sell it unperforated. So Willie has to measure and mark all of the sprocket holes, and he has to punch them out by hand in order to get them to work in his camera and projector. Imagine every time you had to make a TikTok, you wanted to make a TikTok video, you had to measure and punch holes in hundreds of feet of film.
I mean,
and then you would develop it.
That's awful, but think about how many people were making the TikToks back then versus how many people are making TikToks now. So it's a little bit more like doable in the way that like you don't have as much competition.
Yeah.
if you had to work that hard for a TikTok now, you wouldn't do it.
It also makes me think of so many actors and, creative people, all of us these days are, I can't get past the gatekeepers. I'm not getting accepted. I'm not getting callbacks from auditions. Dude, you have access to an entire motion picture studio inside your phone. If 1890s filmmakers could have access to what you have right now, their minds would be blown and they'd be like, all I'm doing is making TikToks for the rest of my life. So what I'm saying is just make stuff.
Just go steal someone's film thingy blueprints and make your own.
It's go time. Willie has his camera. He shoots films in the daytime and then develops them in his parents' basement and then sells these films to vaudeville theaters outright.
So he's back in Chicago?
Yeah, he's back in Chicago.
So he just very narrowly missed H.H. Holmes.
This is true.
Because H.H. Holmes is like 1893, I believe, was the World's Fair that he was involved in.
Yeah, no, Willie was stuck in Dallas. So thank God for that rainstorm. Well, I don't think Willie was exactly H.H. Holmes' target victim.
I mean, honestly, he wasn't super duper picky when it came to just like people staying in his place. But it's interesting. It could have been, I feel like they would have been suited for each other in terms of scamming and money making.
But I just really want to hang a lantern here on the origin of Hollywood. Starts with a guy who's broke because his animal circus situation didn't work out. So he became a fake psychic, used his fake psychic money to build a camera, and then started his money-making motion picture business. And we're going to see, as we hear more early pioneer filmmakers, similar tales of wild, wacky beginnings. Let's just say that.
And I mean, that's a story that we've heard over and over and over and over again, for creative types that make it about all the crazy shit that they had to do leading up to whatever made them money at the end.
Before the 1900s, there's no standardization. So theaters that are showing films can only show one producer's films on the equipment that the producer makes themselves. It's usually like your camera / projector that you are carrying around and you're like, I'm going to show my films at a theater. Here is my projector. Here is my films. Let's show them. And then you'd have to take your projector and your films to the next theater like that. In April of 1897, Willie leases an office at 43 Peck Court, which would later become 8th Street in Chicago's Tenderloin. That's the headquarters of his company, the Multoscope and Film Company. Because all his money is going into his company, he walks 5 miles to and from work every day, which I bike 12 miles to and from work twice a week, but walking 5 miles is a lot.
That's a long walk.
One of the first story films that he does is called The Tramp and the Dog. And the main character is a tramp, basically an unhoused person, that sees a pie cooling on a windowsill. And the tramp nabs it and attempts to run away. But there's a dog, chases him. And just as the tramp has climbed halfway over a fence, the dog bites him in the rear, the fence collapses, and the dog trots away with a piece of the tramp's pants in his teeth, which is
it's such a cartoon.
Like we've seen so many cartoons use a similar scenario and setup. I'm wondering, was Willie the first one to do that? And then everyone has just been copying him since then? Or is that a trope in theater, in minstrel theater or something? His time. And then he's
like, he couldn't possibly be the first one to do that. That's such an iconic thing too.
Audiences love this. Willie sells the prints. He would claim that he sold 4,000 copies, each for $13.50. It plays in England, France, and Germany, and would inspire a bunch of imitations, especially in Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Willie continues living with his mother and remains unmarried until he's 35 years old, when he marries Mary Pinkham on September 7th, 1899. She comes from Stockton, California, Northern California, and they would have no children and remain married until he died in 1948. Based on this, what are you thinking on the scale of gay or legitimate, just a late bloomer?
It's tricky because the type that does the artsy things, like, and he's an inventor and is trying to do the hustle and stuff. So a lot of that type, I feel like that's not something they care about, is the romance and the whatnot. So it's tough because could go either way. Could just be like, romance, whatever, but they did tend to have like fake wives named Mary, didn't they?
And no children, no birth control really happening.
But also that's another thing that like someone who is like obsessed with a project, would not be like, yes, let's make children. He's like in the basement punching holes in film things,
I mean, that's the way. If you're a woman and you have to get married, that's the way. Like, get me an eccentric inventor who is never home.
Great. Yeah. It's starting to come into a little bit of money and success now. So there you go.
Because of the financial success of Tramp and Dog, Willie expands his offices, labs, and machine shops and puts the money into props, sets, and costumes. He makes a series of films set in 1898 era, which is the Spanish-American War, and he starts experimenting with special effects like superimposition. Like a soldier is looking at smoke rising from a campfire and seeing his dreams like superimposed on the smoke.
Yeah.
As someone who went to film school and took 2 film history classes, I never knew about this guy. And I always thought, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I always attributed the idea of superimposition and multiple shots telling a story to other later filmmakers. The reason why Willie doesn't get a lot of film history credit for that is because the studios that would eventually rise up and become really dominant, like MGM and all these 1920s, 1930s era filmmakers, they would want to take credit for pioneering a lot of these techniques. But Willie was actually like the first one to do it. So Willie's selling both projectors and films by 1900 under the name Selig Polyscope Company. His business is valued at $50,000, which is almost $2 million in today money. He's making TikToks, and now he's a TikTok millionaire.
He's an influencer.
He and a collection of other film production companies, including Edison, are rivals. And this truly is the golden age of motion picture piracy. What these guys do is they immediately buy all the prints of each other's films and then makes duplicates of those prints and try to sell the duplications as quickly as possible. There's not a whole lot of established law or copyright enforcement around individual films, and there's no real precedent. So it's about making as many copies and sales of your competitors' films as possible before you get caught. Willie is even selling collections of these pirated films in the Sears Roebuck catalog along with his projector. And so Edison sues both Willie and Sears Roebuck. And Edison actually believes that no one should be making any motion pictures at all unless he gets paid, because he believes he's the inventor of the technology and holds the patent. For the next 10 years, he sues everyone engaged in motion picture production. Lawsuits threaten to end American film production entirely. And it does force a lot of American companies to stop production until the lawsuits resolve. And during this time, which is like the early 1900s, motion picture companies in France are doing all the film production because American companies are being like handcuffed by Edison, right? Mm-hmm. So during this period, like if we're looking at like the trajectory of cinema, it's like France is winning right now. And you're like, oh, wow, France is going to be the next Hollywood. There's no Hollywood yet, but France is going to be the center of the cinematic production world. Prior to this, Willie had made a film for a meat packing company that shows the entire process of cows arriving at a stockyard, their slaughter, the skinning and cutting of their carcasses, and the packing of their meat for sale. And honestly, this sounds horrifying, but the way he had done it, we're two vegetarians on here. Yeah. The way he had done it, and probably the fact that there's no sound and no color made it less traumatic.
That's true.
It was very fascinating to audiences, and it was a very popular film.
It's like, and then the first How It's Made.
Yeah, exactly. And when Upton Sinclair's The Jungle is published in 1905.
Exactly what I was thinking of when you were saying
this book, The Jungle, exposes all the terrible practices within the meat industry. And the public is horrified. The meatpacking company is like, wait, our film that everyone loved. They want Willie to start making more prints of that film so that they can get the public to see like, no, it's not as bad as all of that. So what the meatpacking company does is they pay Willie's legal fees in his lawsuit with Edison. And eventually the Meat Inspection Act of 1906 gets passed. But as we know, there's still a lot of really awful practices in factory farming and the meat industry. That's why me and Ringa are not eating any of that. But public health crises will continue. But that I think is really, really interesting. Basically, Edison was stopped by a meat company because they wanted Willie to make more prints of his How Meat is Made film.
I hate every one in this story. There's no happy hero here. I hate them all.
This is like Warner Brothers suing the AI company Midjourney right now.
Yes.
We're like, oh, we hate Midjourney, but we also hate Warner Brothers really.
Yeah.
Too. But I guess
they both lose.
I hope Warner Brothers wins this fight, but I hope Warner Brothers loses in the end. So to make matters worse, in 1901, one of Willie's biggest vaudeville clients stopped doing business with him when his projector explodes during a show.
Fun.
Causing a fire and seriously injuring 14 spectators. Eventually, Willie would make fireproof projectors in 1912, and firemen would become a big part of Willie's films. In one film that's been lost to history, just to show what I love about Willie, though, is he leans into whatever is going wrong for him. Okay, so my thing exploded. Firemen are going to be my next thing. So in one film that's been lost to history, he puts the camera on the back of a streetcar and has the horse-drawn fire wagon chase the streetcar down the street. And this is one of the earliest tracking shots. Again, as a film production major who took film theory classes, I was always taught that D.W. Griffith was the first person to do the tracking shot in the terrible film Birth of a Nation, which is about the rise of the KKK.
Yeah.
But Willie had been doing that back in 1903. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Willie was not racist, but at least he didn't make a film glorifying the KKK. And maybe instead of showing the KKK riding to victory in D.W. Griffith's film, let's just show firemen instead from Willie's film. Yeah, in film school.
Firemen's way better than meat packing plants.
Yeah.
We're improving slightly.
Yeah. So another really interesting thing, Willie, in the late 1890s, he made one of the first motion pictures showing Black joy in this very short film called Something Good, Negro Kiss. And it's two very well-dressed, very attractive Black actors kissing. And it's lovely. And they're laughing and they're kissing and it's lovely. I'm just saying, why are we forced to watch KKK films in film school and not firemen and Black actors kissing?
Well, why aren't you? Like, why?
I know.
Why are you not?
Film students, rise up and just tell your teachers, no more D.W. Griffith in your film history classes.
Is this like a worldwide thing, or is this America? Because America tends to teach the history it wants you to know.
This is wild. I went to film school in San Francisco, the most liberal city in the world, and they are showing us Birth of a Nation.
But it's still America. Like, there's a standard, like, think about grade school and the kind of history you learn, which is absolutely ridiculous when it comes to what actually happened in this country. So I'm wondering if other countries do learn about this guy. Who knows?
So if you're a film student in wherever you are, write in and let us know, were you shown Birth of a Nation in your film classes? Were you shown KKK dressed people riding? And then were you taught D.W. Griffith is the father of the tracking shot? Or did you see other things? Yeah, let's see how we've progressed at all. So, and the other thing is, Edwin S. Porter is often credited as being the first person to make a film that uses close-up shots and medium shots and wide shots before it just be like one shot and then all the action happens in the one shot. But William N. Selig was doing all of that with these firefighter mock rescues films that he was doing. He was using a wide variety of moving shots, doing that way before Edwin S. Porter. So again, why are we learning that Edwin S. Porter was the father of all that when Willie did it first? Another cute little series that Willie does is in the early 1900s are women doing crimes. And I love to see that. And one of his films is called Tomboys, which is a pair of young ladies doing various pranks on unsuspecting men. Again, the parallels to TikTok, though, are silent film filmmakers and TikTok filmmakers. Like, you guys were thinking on the same wavelength. Yeah. But in 1906, shortly after this Tomboys film releases, one of the women who starred in the film, Margaret Leslie, is found murdered, strangled to death in a Chicago hotel room. And it turns out one of the actors in the film, Howard E. Nicholas, was the guy who did it. Margaret and Howard had done 6 films together. A newspaper speculates that Margaret had been murdered for some diamonds she had. Another suspected that they may have been lovers. Will we ever know what really happened? No, because it's all been lost to history. But it is the first scandal of the motion picture industry. Yes, the first of many. So many. Not defeating gay allegations. And again, these gay allegations are just coming from me based on what I'm reading. Life continues for Willie. He makes a number of films with American West scenery and his good friend, Harry H. Buckwalter.
Okay.
Who helps Willie for years without accepting any payment.
And they're just gals being pals.
Their friendship is described as the closest friendship of his adult life. They filmed trains, the geography of Colorado, Wyoming, the Southwest, Native American dances, and he introduces Willie's the first guy to introduce these Western tropes like the runaway stagecoach. And this happens by accident when his camera spooks the horses that are pulling a coach. I can imagine, because like the sound of an early film camera is like, and that sounds like a rattlesnake. And even my horse, I was at a show when the photographer didn't silence their little click, click, click. Yeah. And every time the click, click, click happened, my horse lost your mind.
Well, horses don't like sounds. Like sudden noises and stuff anyway.
So his camera accidentally spooked the stagecoach. The stagecoach takes off. People in the stagecoach are screaming, "Save us!" And that's the first of many stagecoaches running away because the horses are spooked tropes in Western.
So before, I definitely thought maybe this guy's just a workaholic and doesn't have any interest in, his wife or whatever. But now with this guy, yeah, it's definitely something interesting there.
And I would love to see a romance about early silent film directors fighting Edison and making movies in the Old West, and they're in love.
Yes,
and
there's hotter than fighting Edison.
There's a fancy silent filmmaker, and then there's a bad boy silent filmmaker.
Is this Ed and Steed? Are you modern or not so modern AUing Ed and Steed?
1900s filmmaker. Blackbeard and Steed Bonnet. Yeah. There's a filmmaker who's like, I've been doing films since 1890. I'm over it. And then this young, new filmmaker comes along and is like, we're going to go out west and we're going to make people see things that they've never seen before. Mm-hmm. We're going to put films on the back of stagecoaches and ride as fast as we can through the desert. And the grizzled old filmmaker is like, holy shit, you just blown my mind.
He's got 2 chandeliers in his stagecoach.
There's something that gets in the way of their love. Edison,
the worst.
Yeah. No, we have to part ways because Edison has destroyed the American film industry.
Yeah, let's have Ed and Steed come in and team up with Nikola Tesla to defeat Edison. All he needed was some gay pirates to take over and let the good win.
Eventually, Willie makes the first Western narrative about a husband who assembles a posse to avenge his murdered wife called Tracked by Bloodhounds, or a lynching at Cripple Creek, 1904. Now, here's the thing. We've been a big fan of Willie up until this point, pretty much.
I've kind of like on and off, but yeah. Go on.
Willie makes some unfortunate decisions with this film. He casts a black actor as the murderer in this story, who is going to be avenged by the posse. And so when the black community gets word of this, they're like, Willie, what are you doing? Are you trying to kill us? Because if you show this film with a black actor murdering a white woman and then a posse going after that black man and lynching him, that's going to cause problems for us. We will die.
Like, they didn't need any extra ideas being put out there. It was bad enough already. Yeah.
Also, they're like, who is this black actor who agreed to this role? And so they actually find the black community in Cripple Creek finds the actor who accepted this role and who acted in the film. They force him to leave town and never come back.
I mean, I'm sure it was I need this gig, that still happens today. I mean, look at all the people on the fucking Harry Potter show. Like, I don't think that I think some of them just don't care, but I don't think that of all of them, I think that there are some people that are like, well, someone's going to be in this and I need the money. So here we are.
I need money. I'm very poor. You could not pay me $10 million to be in the Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Hey, if I were to give you $10 million to be in the Harry Potter, no, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. You're like,
no, I would not take money to be in the Harry Potter thing. But I also have definitely been in a position where someone's going to get paid for this and it's a shit thing. So it might as well be me though. Cause like, if I don't take this from what I can't think of an example right now, or like,
no, I can think of an example. I used to write for real estate agents, and I think real estate agents are probably evil.
Mom's the real estate agent.
Oh, no. Let's just say it wasn't a job that was benefiting humanity, but I needed a job.
Yeah, it happens, and it's someone's going to be paid to do this. Why should it not be me? And there's, we wouldn't go as far as the Harry Potter movie, right?
Yeah.
Because we're already used to being without $10 million or whatever. We're not expecting to have that. But if something more our speed came along, you're kind of like, what can I do? But it's a heated topic that, like, I feel like there's no winners here. And it all comes back to the studios and the companies and stop making shit from fucking Harry Potter is what it comes down to. The studios are the bad guys here.
Yeah.
Bring it back to WB.
Yeah, and also, Willie, you could have just made a film about a white actor killing someone's white wife and then a posse. Or you could have made the posse, or you could have made the posse all black actors. And I would love to see a posse of black cowboys taking down a white guy.
Yep.
And avenging, that would have been great. But you chose wrong. And I will say that, unfortunately, Cripple Creek becomes a major hit because a labor struggle happened to be happening in Cripple Creek at the time. It was a miners' strike and a bomb. Back in the old days, they did labor struggles for real. A bomb kills 13 scabs and injures 6. Like I said, they don't do the labor movement like they used to.
Nope.
It becomes front page news. So audiences all over are curious to watch this film that takes place at the location of this minor labor struggle thing. Each 4.5-minute print sells for $54, which is $2,000 in today money. This is around the time when Nickelodeons start popping up in the Northeast. These are 50 to 300 seat theaters that charge a patron a nickel to watch films. A small group of Nickelodeon operators in Pittsburgh who go by the name, say the name,
Duquesne,
which is spelled not like how it sounds. Duquesne Amusement Supply Company are scrambling with limited resources and funds to make their way in this new industry. In fact, they can't even afford to purchase chairs for their Nickelodeon, so they rent them from a neighboring undertaker. The brothers who run Duquesne, these Polish Jewish immigrants named the Warner Brothers, order Willie's film, The Bandit King, which Willie agrees to ship cash on delivery. But after that, the Warner Brothers threaten to take their business elsewhere if Willie doesn't let them order on credit. Willie agrees, and the Warner Brothers quickly run up a bill of $300, which is $11,000 in today money, without paying.
That sounds like my life.
Yeah. So Willie's not getting paid. Meanwhile, the Warner Brothers are opening new theaters and renting films to other Nickelodeons, advertising themselves as the largest distributors in the South. These guys are even showing films before their official release date. Eventually, Willie sends his next film, cash on delivery. The Warners pay off their debts, but you kind of get an idea of the early shenanigans that are going on. The early people that are building up these companies that are going to eventually be the major media conglomerates.
They got things changed.
Exactly. They got their start scamming, running up debts, and they continue scamming and still doing it. Exactly. Eventually, these Warner Brothers would indeed become major film distributors and major producers of the sound era, with their first major sound film, The Jazz Singer, which happens to be a film that features a white actor in blackface. Bring it all back to the minstrel era. So Willie is biggest. Also, again, in film school, we watched The Jazz Singer. We watched actors in blackface. We watched the KKK. And I'm just saying, do we really have to do this? I think there are other things that we can look at.
Well, I think it's important to watch those things too, but it shouldn't be the basis of the entire history of film.
But the discussion of, look at these geniuses, D.W. Griffith, who came up with the first tracking shots, and look at this, behold the beauty of the tracking shots of these KKK writers.
No,
Ugh,
it should be like, look at the kind of thing they were doing back then.
Yeah.
Like, let's not repeat this. That should be what's being taught.
Willie's biggest nemesis during this time is Carl Lamelli, a Nickelodeon operator and distributor who'd eventually head Universal Pictures. He refuses to pay a huge bill. He mounts, in fact, in addition to not paying Willie, he mounts a huge ad campaign against Willie and other pioneering companies at the time. Meanwhile, at the same time, William Fox orders one copy of everything Willie produces, and Marcus Lowe, who founded the Greenwich Village Nickelodeon that would eventually become MGM, told Willie he could easily get prints of his film from a third party, likely meaning Carl Lamelli, cheaper than what Willie charged. And so eventually Willie has to lower his prices because he knows that Marcus Lowe will find a way to undercut him, because this is the golden age of film piracy. And what makes Willie's film so popular, especially in comparison to European countries, is that his films push the boundaries. They're suggestive, whereas European films are tame in comparison.
Interesting.
And they're suggestive sexually. And they're also suggestive in the way that gender norms are played with. Like, he has a lot of like women in pants, and he has women rescuing handsome cowboys from peril. I think that is interesting from a queer lens.
It is. And also, you think about like European film and art being sexually suggestive and open that way, and queer and gender role breaking. And you think of the American art as being a lot stifled that way, you know, that it would have been different.
Well, think about it. American film doesn't really get stifled until the Hays Code. So, which is 1930s. So pre-Hays Code films, this is why they're so interesting. They're very sexual. They have drug use involved. They have a lot of subversive imagery. Yeah. And during the time, churches, used to be the main source of entertainment, I guess you could say. Like, everyone goes to church on Sunday, but now people are going to Nickelodeons and they're watching these very risque moving pictures. And so the church leaders are a bit upset with the early film industry. Let's just say that.
They are.
Yeah. Many patrons, in fact, are attending Nickelodeons every day. So operators are trying to change their shows at least 3 times a week. So there's huge demand for new films. In 1907, there's a full-page ad in Billboard announcing that Willie has completed building a new studio. And these indoor studios are needed so that you can make films despite rain, snow, wind, and temperature changes. And this is built in the outskirts of Chicago, and it has a glass roof to let light in. And it features one of the first ever backlots, which include a fake lake and a growing collection of exotic animals. And throughout this there continues to be a whole bunch of lawsuits and patent stuff with Edison. I'm sure to legal historians and First Amendment people, it's all super important. I skimmed it. So
I bet slightly familiar with all of that just because I detest Edison. Yeah. But and I know a lot about his stealing from people and getting his way because of throwing money at people and stuff, and not have, especially Tesla, who didn't have money to fight back with him and didn't have,
So do know that it all gets resolved with a Supreme Court decision. In 1908, Willie releases Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which may be the first ever American horror film. In 1909, he makes a film about Custer's last stand and actually hires real Sioux Native Americans for it, including 3 Sioux horsemen who were there at the Battle of Little Bighorn. So Willie's like, ooh, I can get actual authentic, people who were there to tell me what it was like. And the truth is, they don't remember anything of it because it was over so quickly.
Yeah.
He killed this dude, I don't know, shortly after the release of On the Little Bighorn, November 25th, 1909, the New York Dramatic Mirror reports that Willie is going to be establishing a studio in Los Angeles, California, and that he's already bought the property. And it's crazy thing. Like, we got to make so many films. Okay. We got to make a studio with a glass ceiling so that we can shoot rain, snow, wind, whatever. We can still shoot. Then it's like, oh, fuck. It's Chicago. It gets dark. Okay. What's a place where it doesn't get dark? Los Angeles. I mean, I think he figured out the difference between Southern California and Northern California by then.
Yeah, hopefully.
Good thing he did Northern California in the 1880s before the film industry really got going. So he was like, haha, I learned my lesson. Northern California gets dark and cold. Let's try Southern California. So the new studio in Edendale, which is the historic name of the Los Angeles neighborhood that is basically Echo Park, Silver Lake, and Los Feliz. Ringa has no idea what that all means.
I've heard of those things. So that's something.
Yeah.
I know those are like right around LA.
Yeah.
But like things I couldn't tell you like where they are in California, but those ones I've heard of.
Our favorite director, Taika Waititi, lived in Los Feliz for a bit. There's a Trader Joe's there that is always crowded and the parking is terrible, but it is a very nice neighborhood, hilly, beautiful homes. I ride through it twice a week on my way to work. It's the first permanent movie studio in Los Angeles, and other studios would follow Willie's lead and head out to Southern California. Willie also opens a zoo to the public in 1915 in Lincoln Heights, where basically Lincoln Park is today, kind of near the Los Angeles Medical Examiner office. And there's over 700 animals there, including giraffes named Fritz and Lenny, lions, llamas, cows from India, aviaries of exotic birds, chimps, elephants, and an orangutan that has a role in one of Willie's films called The Orang-Otang. But that is the only film this orangutan is in because he chases his human co-star George Larkin while using a cane as a weapon, and he destroys 2 sets. And eventually Willie has to have cast iron furniture made that gets bolted to the floor just so he could finish the film.
My God.
And by the way, Willie's name still remains on one of the streets bordering Lincoln Park, and it's called Selig Place. In 1911, a gardener named Frank Minimatsu is found drunk and firing shots into a gasoline tank of a car in a garage on the property. He's fired by Willie's director and studio head, Francis Boggs. There's 2 Franks here. It's so confusing because there's Francis Boggs and then there's Frank Minimatsu. Frank is the gardener who's drunk, okay? Mm-hmm. Francis is the director. Get the 2 names, okay? So Frank has a mental breakdown after this. And 4 months later, he goes to Francis and he asks for his job back. And Francis Boggs, being a Pisces, rehires Frank against everyone's advice. Can you see where this is going?
Yep, the lion always eats the fish.
On October 27th, 1911, while Willie and his main director in Los Angeles, Francis Boggs, are having a meeting, Frank Minimatsu shows up with a gun and starts shooting. Willie tries to defend Francis, but Francis is shot in the heart and killed. He's only 38 at the time. Willie escapes death. He's only shot in the arm. A cowboy actor named Tom Sanchi overpowers Frank before he's able to get away. And eventually Frank admits right away his guilt. He tells investigators he waited 6 months for the opportunity to kill Francis, saying, "He was always a good friend to me, but an old man told me he was a bad man, so I killed him." Okay. Friends later report that Frank suffers from a delusion that he needs to kill 3 bad men so he can get into heaven. And he's convicted on first-degree murder on December 16th, 1911. But because of his mental state, the jury recommends life imprisonment, which actually sounds extremely like humanitarian. For 1911, they're like, this man is clearly mentally ill. Wow. It's like good for you guys for noticing and understanding that. While he's at San Quentin, he works in the prison garden. He actually rejects parole twice because he feared being deported to Japan. He eventually dies July 23rd, 1937. As San Quentin's longest serving inmate. And after 25 years and 7 months behind bars, and he's still buried at San Quentin Prison Cemetery. Francis Boggs is buried at Graceland Cemetery in Chicago. And I'm just saying, movies and murder, it's always been there from the beginning. The true crime, the Hollywood.
I mean, people have been obsessed with true crime forever.
I think art and violence have always been intertwined because they're the thing that
absolutely
captivates our imagination and creates change in the world. But Willie continues to make films both in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and on location at various places that are cool around the country, inspired by the serial story format that competing newspapers start doing to get readers' attention. Selig makes the first film called The Adventures of Kathleen in 1913 that is a serial format where it ends with a cliffhanger. And then you have to come back and you have to watch what happens the next part and the next part, starring Kathleen Williams. And in 1917, Willie sells his studio in Edendale to William Fox, the founder of the Fox Film Corporation, which would that's a whole nother story, but it would eventually become 20th Century Fox. He doesn't own 20th Century Fox. They actually kick him out and take his name. He also, Willie sells his Chicago studio complex to a car dealership for $400,000, which is about $10 million in today money. He moves the headquarters of his Selig Polyscope company to the zoo. Now it's all zoo for him.
Okay. All right. All zoo.
He keeps working as an independent producer. One of his projects is about the 1915 Armenian genocide. And the book provides so much detail about this, like movie and the story and the person who is involved in this. It could be a whole nother episode, but I'll try to give the too long didn't read. So the survivor of the Armenian genocide, Aurora Mardigian, helps write a story that becomes the basis for a manuscript. It's about her experiences, about her life. Willie makes a film from that and actually has Aurora starring in it. It's all shot at Willie's Zoo. It's called, the original title is called Ravished Armenia, but it was retitled to Auction of Souls and released in 1919. I think only stills and only pieces of it survive, but they're like really, like they show a bunch of Armenian women naked, pinned to crosses, and like with their hair, the only thing that covers their bodies. The stories of what this woman went through are atrocious. Like she saw all her family killed and she saw all of her female friends imprisoned and raped. Just the fact that this early filmmaker, Willie, is like, I'm going to make a film about this, and that the film like actually got made, and he made it in his zoo and then showed it to audiences in the 19-teens is just like, there's a lot going on there. And wow. And I'm like, that no one studies this in film history and that the film is kind of lost is tragic. Things begin to decline for Willie's film production career. Still, he's among the founders of the Independent Screen Artists Guild in 1921, which is aimed to fight censorship. And that little guild includes Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Louis B. Mayer, and others. And in 1925, Willie sells his zoo. And from 1925 until his death, Willie makes his living selling licensing rights to the novels and the stories that he'd been buying since 1909. And in 1926, he earns about $16,300 selling the rights for all these stories, which is about $300,000 in today money. You're making $300,000 a year. I think you're doing okay.
Yeah.
The following year, he made half that, which is still like, okay, so that's $150,000 in today money. That's great. You're doing good. But I don't know if he was just bad with money or he was used to a certain lifestyle, because during the early years of the Great Depression, he and his wife are pawning their furniture and their jewelry, and they're borrowing money from friends. So like for a while, he's been selling his studios. He's been selling his zoo. I'm like, what's going on? He keeps an office at 6606 Sunset Boulevard as a play broker and author's agent. His wife, Mary, is often quoted as saying, we've been rich and we've been poor, but we've been the same people throughout. Willie spends his final year annotating all the documents from his life so that future generations could read them and understand what was going on. 200 mourners attend Willie's funeral, including Louis B. Mayer, Cecil B. DeMille, and Samuel Goldwyn. His wife, Mary, passes away 8 years later. Both their ashes are interred at Chapel of the Pines Crematory in Los Angeles. In his career, Willie made over 3,500 films, many of those films pioneering tropes, effects, and ways of production we still use today. He pioneered the Western genre and launched the careers of early Western actors like Bronco Billy Anderson, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, and Tom Mix. So why did so many of Willie's accomplishments get forgotten to history? The reason is the second generation of filmmakers who became the industry leaders in the late silent era and the early sound era claimed these techniques as their own and tended to dismiss the early filmmakers as primitive. What remains of Willie's legacy? His glass roof studio in Chicago is now a condominium. He has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame between Gower and El Centro. Selig Place in Lincoln Heights is a street that bears his name. And the parking lot on Olive between 7th and 8th Street is the site where Willie's first LA film was shot. And today, many production vehicles still park there during downtown LA film shoots. All his documents are stored at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Special Collections. And in 1945, the LA Times said, if it hadn't been for William Selig, there never would have been a Hollywood. And you can check out the biography of Colonel William N. Selig, the man who invented Hollywood, by Andrew A. Arish. It is meticulously researched from Selig's collection at the Academy Library. And I saw in his little acknowledgments that he went to my school, Chapman University, and he was thanking a bunch of teachers that I'm like, oh, I know them. So buy his book if you're interested in the origins of Hollywood, because it covers, as long as this episode was and as much as we covered, that book covers so much.
Well, I expected, just based on the beginning, to dislike this guy a lot more. I don't know. I thought he would be, clearly he made some questionable choices, but I think he generally had the right idea of where he was heading with things, but sometimes you get greedy and money drives your decisions. But in general, I think he was trying to do things the right way. So I don't dislike him so much, but there's definitely certain things going on here that I feel like it should have switched up, but it's hard to make when you're against Edison. I will almost always take your side.
On a scale of shitty filmmakers from film history, if we have D.W. Griffith, shitty, William Selig, not as shitty as.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's really very interesting that he's not being taught, now that we know things and now that we have access to all this information very readily. It's wild that in such a modern time would not be taught about him.
And I think a lot of film school teachers teach what they were taught. It passes down, and then the next generation of film students teaches what they were taught from their teachers. And this new stuff about William Selig really has just come out recently with this biographer deciding to go to the Academy Library and look at these papers, which hadn't been looked at in a while.
Well, think about how when we were young and learning history, Edison was a well-regarded name because nobody knew who Nikola Tesla was. Now we're hearing more about this kind of history, and things are changing about how we look upon historical figures. So hopefully, yes, it will go forward with more information.
And we will soon cover Oscar Micheaux, who is an early Black filmmaker of the silent film era. And that will hopefully also deconstruct a lot of what we have been taught about film history, which is not all white.
Right.
This is Haunted Hollywood Hour. If you've enjoyed this episode, definitely give us a follow on Instagram at Haunted Hollywood Hour Podcast, all one word. Give us a little rating and or review wherever you get your podcasts so other people and the algorithm can help other people find it. Yeah. And tell your friends about it. We just have a small community, but actually we have like 170 subscribers now. So we are growing. Basically, if 170 people showed up to your party, that'd be a good party. Mm-hmm. So we have a good party every week where we talk about Hollywood history and film. Thanks for doing this with me, Ringa.
Of course.